What do we do in our bedrooms? Okay, so top of the list there, I've got sleep. The primary function for our bedrooms is for us to go to sleep. Is our bedroom set up for sleep? Think about the other elements that we might use our bedrooms for. We might use them as our playroom. We might use them to do our homework. It might be where we're sent to as a sanction. You know, if perhaps we've behaved in a way that's not in keeping with expectations, we might be sent to our room. Our rooms have different functions, don't they? However, if we associate our room solely with play, we're not going to have a good night's sleep in there, are we? If we associate our room with punishment, how likely are we to have a good night's sleep in there? So think perhaps of what our children associate their rooms with. How can we make our spaces, you know, fit for purpose, usable? So our bedrooms should be a calming space. Think about what we can see and hear and touch and smell in our bedrooms. Think about that sensory environment. If our bedrooms are so jam-packed full of toys and exciting things and posters and you name it, really, really visually stimulating, how likely are we going to be to calm down and go to sleep? So our bedrooms should be a calming space. So where possible, reduce the impact of visual stimulation to allow for that calming space. Our bedroom for the function of sleep needs to be predictable. We need to know that, you know, our space is our space and won't be invaded by anything or anybody else. We need to know where things are. If things change often within our space, that can dysregulate our sleep. We need to know where we're sleeping. So I think an organised room, we need to know that bed is for sleep. We need to know that toys go away before bedtime. It's important that we have a bedtime routine. Now, some of you might already know, but for those with neurodevelopmental conditions, around about 80% of ND children will have challenge around sleep. So it's important that we put things into place that can help. Again, think back to those slides before, our executive functioning, our sensory environment, and our emotional regulation, or those 3 A's if you prefer to think about it in those ways. So we need to perhaps consider our environment, what we can see, what we can hear. Make sure that our room is conducive for a good night's sleep. A bedtime routine is, you know, absolutely paramount. Our bedtime routine should start early in the evening and include things like packing our bag for the next day, you know, our school bag, getting that out the way, getting our homework out the way early enough in the evening so we can, you know, we can mentally relax. Our bedtime routine will include eating at a reasonable time, will include perhaps putting our pajamas on and brushing our teeth at a reasonable time, and that wind down for bed. I'm not going to go too far into it because I know that Witherslack will have webinars around sleep. But just consider our bedrooms, our environment, and whether it's conducive for a good night's sleep. Because poor sleep will impact on our executive function, and so we've got that vicious cycle there. Think about our bathrooms. What do we do in our bathrooms? What's the function needed for our bathroom? So is our bathroom as private space, you know, for us to be able to use the toilets and have a shower? Think in terms of our emotional regulation. Are we scared that someone's going to come in and, you know, spoil our time in the bathroom or hurry us up and those types of things? Are bathrooms relaxing spaces? Do they lend themselves well to, you know, for the functions that we need them to? For lots of our children with ND, being clean, whether that's in the shower or the bath or brushing our teeth, can be really, really stressful situations, perhaps, and cause us lots of anxiety and cause us emotional dysregulation. How can we think about that in terms of how we use our space? How can we make it a calming space to lessen any anxieties around getting clean and having our hair washed or our teeth brushed? What do we associate our bathrooms with? Do we associate our bathrooms with calm time, being able to get clean? Do we associate them with playtime, all the toys in the bath? If we associate our bathrooms with playtime, if those toys are always out in the bathroom, well, quite often, every time we need our children to be quick, can be a difficult situation, because if we're associating our room with play, it's exactly what we're going to do in it, isn't it? So suppose really thinking about how we use that space. How can we ensure that our time in there is private? How can we ensure that we have enough time to get clean? Well, perhaps we might want to think about scheduling bathroom times to make sure that we have a slot if we've got a busy household. We might want to have baskets or tubs for items. So think what I said about those toys, put things away when it's not playtime, to make sure our children and young people know what's expected of them in the bathroom. We might have specific baskets or tubs for certain tasks. So we know that when we need to brush our teeth, everything we need to brush our teeth is together. Or if we're in the shower, everything we need for the shower is together. So putting our toys away, we might want to use timers for things like being, brushing our teeth or being in the shower. How many of us have children or young people who might be in the shower for literally 10 seconds and obviously haven't had time to get clean? Or may well be in our shower for half an hour and not realise that it's time to get out. So having timers for these functions is very, very helpful, especially when we're in a busy household and we've got to fit in everybody's shower or bath or teeth brushing time, because otherwise that's going to build anxiety, isn't it? We might want to have reminders and descriptors. Okay, so what do we mean by that? When our children go into the bathroom of a morning, we say, come on, hurry up, get ready. What does get ready even mean? How do our children know what we expect of them? Okay, so those reminders and descriptors might be, the steps needed to brush our teeth. Might be the steps needed for in the shower. How many times have our children, young people, been in the shower and they've come out and we've said, did you wash your hair? No, back in the shower, wash your hair. Did you perhaps wash your feet? You've been in the garden, did you wash your feet? No, I haven't done that. So those reminders and descriptors can be often very, very helpful for our children, so they know what we expect of them. Think about our kitchens, perhaps. What do we do in our kitchens? What do we associate our kitchens with? Cooking, yes. Cleaning up, yes. We might eat in our kitchens. That might be where we have our meals. We might actually do our homework in the kitchens, at the kitchen table. It might be the place that we go to play and to be messy and to, have all of our toys out or the paints out. We might entertain in our kitchen, so we might associate our kitchen with lots of people and lots of fun. Think about what we do in our own individual kitchens and think about whether that helps our children, young people, or whether that hinders. What can we do to help that? They think in terms of not just our children. This webinar is called Neurodiversity and Our Families. So it's not just our children that we're thinking about here, is it? With everything we're talking about. could well be ourselves. We might be neurodivergent ourselves. So how can we organise that space to make it conducive for our family to use? So keeping our pots and pans and plates and cups and utensils organised is important. We need to know where to find these things when we need them. What about what we eat? It might be helpful if we can plan our weekly menu and our weekly grocery list. That might help us be more organised and knowing what our week is going to entail, knowing what we need for each meal during the week. However, that can also help our children and young people know what to expect from those meals. For children, young people with ND, 70% of them are likely to have challenges around food and meal times. So, not knowing what to eat for that day or that week might cause our children anxiety. So we might need to know that actually Monday is korma night and Tuesday might be lasagna. And for some of our children, young people, and indeed us as adults, we might need that forewarning, that, continuity perhaps. We might want to divide our kitchen into different areas to make sure that we're utilising the space as best as we can. Think again in terms of our executive functioning and how we can plan and organise what we're doing. So we might divide our areas. Okay, I'm cooking here and dirty dishes go over there. Or I'm cooking here, but preparation and serving is going to be on the table behind me. So think, in terms of what we've got on screen there, eating, studying, playing, entertaining, we might want to divide our kitchen. For some of our children and young people, eating habits might be difficult. We might have children who perhaps might overeat. That might be because of lack of impulse control. That might be, seeking sensory stimulation. It might be for lots of different reasons. However, where we keep that food might be, really important. So if our children tend to overeat and cause, perhaps issues for themselves, we might want to consider where we keep snacks. Anything that's quick and easy, so whether that's our crisps and biscuits, whether it's the sweets, whether it's our yogurts, whatever we consider as snacks in our house, whatever our children and young people may or may not go to, if they do need sensory input, or if they do feel that eating might calm anxiety, if it's causing issues for us, we might want to consider where we keep those snacks. Likewise, if we're developing independence for our children and young people, we might want to put snacks and food in a more convenient place for them to be able to get for themselves. It's dependent on our individual families, isn't it? So making sure we consider where the items in our kitchens are placed so we can utilise them best. Meal times often cause high anxiety for some of our children and young people. So planning for meal times. So if they're using the kitchen table for play, we'll maybe planning lots of transition time so they can finish their task, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, before clearing the table and putting the dinner items back out. So, think about transitions from each of the areas we're using. What's in our bedrooms and our kitchens and our bathrooms and any other areas of our life can very much impact our emotional regulation. Think about what we'd said before about our executive functioning and our sensory environment. If we feel overwhelmed with our executive functioning, if we feel overwhelmed or underwhelmed in our sensory environment, that may well dysregulate our emotional state. So our rooms really do impact us in lots of ways. Our rooms impact our executive functioning in terms of how we plan and organize and order and sequence things. So clutter and busy rooms may well add into all of that. Notice I'm not saying messy rooms. Okay. Messy rooms might be cluttered rooms and might be busy rooms, but actually tidy rooms can also be busy rooms. So just be mindful of what's happening in our rooms, what we can see, hear, smell, touch. When there's too much sensory stimuli coming at us in a room, even if it's a tidy room, it can still dysregulate us. I'm going to give you a quick example here. Some of you might well have heard this example before if you've attended my training in any way. I've got a son who, when he was younger, wanted a football bedroom. Okay, so I gave him the best football bedroom I could dream of. We painted his rooms. He was an Everton supporter, please don't judge. Painted his rooms in Everton blue. Painted a great big Everton crest on the chimney breast. We had Everton bedspread, Everton lampshade, Everton curtains, Everton rug. He had football memorabilia all over his room, shelves of trophies and medals and framed shirts, and his wardrobe door was covered in like a green toweling. We'd cut out the lines of the football pitch. His handles were little footballs. It looked brilliant, and it was incredibly tidy, and the room was always so tidy. However, just think about all of that stuff I've just told you. It was so visually overwhelming and visually busy. Could he sleep in there? Not a chance. So it's not about being messy, but it's about being busy. So there was so much visual stimulation there, he couldn't sleep. So think about our rooms, and like I said, it could be our bedroom, but it could equally be our living room where we want to relax in, or our kitchen where we need to stay on task. Think about what's around us. Clutter distracts us by pulling our attention away from where it should be. So if there's lots of things going on, if there's lots of visual stimuli, we can often lose track of where we need to focus our attention. Think about where we're expecting our children to do our homework tasks, perhaps. What else is pulling their attention away from where it should be? Clutter, busyness reminds us that there's stuff to do. It inhibits our creativity and productivity by pulling our attention, and it can make it harder for us to relax, and that's physically relax, mentally and emotionally relax. So just think about those types of things. Think about our rooms. Think about perhaps, have you ever been in a position where, you can't find something? We've all used the term can't see the wood for the trees, or, can't see for looking. So perhaps our children and young people, or us as adults, might have a busy shelf but can't find the item we need because there's so much there, even if it's tidy. Or in a busy drawer, we can't find what we need. Or in a busy wardrobe, can't find what we need. So think about reducing busyness, reducing clutter. So we might want to reduce the clutter. However, we might need some things visual, because for often, those with executive functioning challenges, like I said, which is a theme that goes through lots of neurodivergent conditions such as ADHD and autism and tic disorders and dyspraxia and dyslexia. So often, out of sight might mean out of mind. We can't see it. We forget it even exists. So think about those things that we need to remember. That might be our toothbrush. That might be our pajamas, So think about in your particular family, in your life, what do we need to be at hand? So where can we put that? What can we do with those things that we need? Lots of people use things like organisation stations. And I know that's a very, you know, the word organisation station sound a little bit mad. However, some of us do it anyway, you know. It just means a central place for information. In my house, on one corner of my worktop in my kitchen, that's where the keys go. That's where our mobile phones go. That's where our chargers go. So for me, that one space there is an organisation station. I know when I need my keys, that's where they are. I know when I need my phone charger, that's where it is. And they go back on that particular place. Your house might have a similar, you know, you might have a dish for your keys or a certain cupboard that you put all of these things in. Having a central place for all of these means that we can remember it. And think back to our slide before, you know, out of sight, out of mind, out of existence. What about our organisational things? So some of us might use calendars or chalkboards, you know, might be on the fridge with post-it notes or magnets. You know, what can we add in, you know, to perhaps make sure we know where our central information points are, our organisation stations. So that might be cubbies or pegs or hooks. It could be containers, baskets, bowls, anything that makes it easy to grab the things that you need. So it might be having a station at the front door where we know that when we pack our school bag, that's where it goes. When we pack our lunchbox, that's where it goes. Our coats are there, so we know when we're coming out for school, we can pick everything up from the same place rather than going around our houses and picking them up from different areas. So having those organisation stations are really, really important to help, you know, strengthen our executive functioning. Ask our children and young people to do things, to get things, to organise things. How do they know what we expect of them? Now, on one side of our screen there, you can see, you know, an organisation station, like we had on the previous slide. You know, this station here, this is a member of our staff team. This is what they have, you know, so the coats are there, the umbrellas there, the backpacks there, the shoes are there. So they know everything is in the one place to go. When we're saying to our children and young people, make sure you've got everything together, what does that actually mean? What does everything mean? What does together mean? Because your perception of that might be different from mine, which might be different from somebody else's. So if we're using explicit instructions to tell our children what we expect from them, you know, well, then they know, you know, what we expect, then they know what they need to do. When we say, put your stuff away in your wardrobe, how do they know what that means? How many of us have ever gone upstairs and found literally everything shoved in the wardrobe, and it's like Jenga. You open the doors and everything falls out again. Our children have put things away in the wardrobe, which is what we ask them to do. So it might be that we think about how we communicate expectations. If we're asking our children to put things away in a certain way, we'll show them what we mean. We might even have frames of reference for that. It might be visuals, it might be bullet points, it might even be taking a photograph of our expectations so they know what that actually means. How many of us have ever said to our children, go and clean your room? Wow, what does that even mean, clean your room? For that's likely to ramp up anxieties straight away. You know, not knowing where to start and how to start, what to do. Think about all those executive functioning. If we're more explicit, go into your room and put your toys in your toy box. Our children know what we expect when we say that, don't we? Put your clean clothes in your drawer. Okay, rather than just tidy your room. How many of us have ever gone into a bedroom and the floor's clear, but actually everything's shoved under the bed or shoved on top of the chest of drawers? What do we mean? What do we mean when we're asking our children, young people things? So if we can make sure that we're explicit and we're communicating our expectations in a clear way, we're more likely to have, better outcomes. So visual supports are going to be really helpful for communicating those expectations, but also for helping with routine and organisation. If you think about all of those things we were talking about earlier on about executive functioning, visual supports absolutely strengthen all of that. Visual support also encourage independence and autonomy in our families. So building on, our sense of well-being, our sense of independence and confidence and self-esteem. Visual support improve our understanding. Like we've just said, explicit communication of what's expected, of what's needed. And because we know what's needed and what's expected and what's happening, that helps us to reduce our anxiety. Visual support are non-judgmental, and they provide lots of opportunity for interaction. So we're going to move on from, from that. We're thinking about routine. What routines do we have in our homes, in our environments? We might have morning routines specific to getting up and getting ready and getting out to school or work. We might have routines around our meal times, routines around coming in from school, doing our homework, our bedtime routines. We all have some type of routine. However, some of us might benefit from having more structure to those routines and having continuity in those routines. Think about our families, perhaps, where we might have blended families, where we may spend some portion of our time, in one household and some portion of our time in another household. If there's no continuity with our routines, well, that's going to impact our executive functioning, that's going to impact our emotional regulation. So thinking about the routines that we have, what helps within them, what challenges within them. Routines, like I said, are really, really important. They provide some control, helps us to externalize what might not be happening internally. So, time management, task initiation, sequencing steps, all of these things that might be difficult for us to do in our heads if we have neurodivergent conditions, well, externalizing it into some sort of organized routine can very much strengthen that. Routine establishes boundaries. It lets us know what's expected of us and what's expected of other people. Helps reduce anxiety, helps to prepare us for those transitions. Think about what I was saying before about, the example I gave, transition from, playtime on the kitchen table, colouring in or with the pencils or the paints or the Lego or whatever that might be, to mealtime. If we have a mealtime routine, well, then that will already help with that transition, won't it? To help put away the toys and get ready for mealtime. So it reduces our anxiety. Think about our children who might have anxieties around bedtimes. Having a robust routine can help lessen all of those anxieties. Helps our working memory. Helps minimize conflict. Think about things that happen in our families, where those pressure points might be. For example, you need to turn your PlayStation off because it's bedtime. You need to hurry up and get ready for school. Often the pressure points in our family lives is all around where we could benefit with strengthening our routine there. And routine is important when it applies to the whole family. Think about those pressure points, and we're saying to our children every morning, come on, you need to hurry up and get ready for school. But actually that routine applies to us as well. Getting up, getting ready, in the bathroom and out on time, getting dressed on time, getting out the door on time. So our routines apply to our whole family. about the relationships between our family. You know, the infographic there just highlighting a couple of pieces. We're all on this webinar today because we have neurodivergence in our family. We might have children with conditions such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, tic disorders, autism, ADHD. However, 80% of neurodivergence is hereditary. So if we've got one person in our family who's neurodivergent, well, the likelihood is that other people in the family will also be neurodivergent. And we'll all be, you know, thinking, those themes we've been talking about today, we'll all be interacting with those different themes in different ways. So being mindful, actually, it's not just one person who benefits from routine or benefits from structure in our organisation, or will benefit from helping to modulate emotional responses. It's not just one person who might be overwhelmed with what's going on in the house. The chances are that there'll be others in the family. The conditions that we're talking about are lifespan conditions. So the challenges that might be presenting when our children are little are actually challenges that are going to go through the whole lifespan. The nuances of those challenges might change. However, those challenges will always be there if we don't develop strategies to help us with them. In our family, in our support network, we might also have learned behaviours. For some of us, we might be thinking, oh, well, okay, you know, we've got one child who does X, Y, and Z because of their neurodivergence. But the younger sibling might be copying. We might have a parent who, because of our neurodivergence, might have emotional dysregulation. Our children may well be learning from us with that emotional dysregulation. So I suppose what we mean by putting that in the slides is thinking about all the themes that we've talked about. Organisation, thinking about our rooms, thinking about the way we interact, thinking about our routines, thinking about our stress response. If we have routine that applies to all of our family, well, then it's strengthening our strengths. It's scaffolding our challenges. And the things that are learned within our family are all going to strengthen our positives in our relationships. And like it said before, consistency is key, continuity. You know, so if we're setting up a routine, we need to stick with that routine. If we have a routine in perhaps one area of our life, we'll perhaps marry that up with the same routine in other areas. If we have those blended living arrangements, making sure that routine and organisation looks the same in each household. When we're talking about regulation, when we're talking about family groups, you know, often, you know, we impact each other. Research has shown that parents and children co-regulate. So when our children are upset, you know, we can help calm our children, can't we? By being calm ourselves. However, what happens when our emotional regulation might be, you know, heightened? If we're angry or panicked or stressed, how can we calm a stressed child out? So being calm ourselves is really important in being able to co-regulate with our children, young people. We've got a little picture on screen there. Obviously, that's not our picture at ADHD Foundation. Obviously, that's a picture from Inside Out, which is a Disney film. Our children often experience big emotions by virtue of their neurodivergence. Us as parents and carers, if we're neurodivergent, we may well experience big emotions as well. So it's important that we can recognize those big emotions, that we can, acknowledge those big emotions, and that we can do something about those big emotions. Because when we're, feeling these big feelings or these big emotions, we can easily become overwhelmed. And if we're overwhelmed, we're going to become dysregulated. We'll be dysregulated in our executive functioning. We might need to seek out or exclude sensory information. And we may well be very much in our fight or flight system. Again, think about those 3 A's that we spoke about before: attention, arousal, and anxiety. So learning ways as a family to recognize and identify big emotions can be really, really helpful. Humans are fight or flight response, which I'm guessing you've probably heard of. Our fight or flight response is an inbuilt response that was originally designed to keep us safe. Okay, think of all those, I don't know, millions of years back when we were with the dinosaurs, obviously not historically correct, but if a big saber-toothed tiger came bounding over to us, what would our choices be? Fight it off, run away, play dead. There are inbuilt responses to threat to keep us safe. And although there's no saber-toothed tigers coming to get us anymore, we still have these same responses when our brains detect a threat. And this threat, might be actual threat. It's often just perceived threat. And it can look in different ways. Threat might be, actually, there's too much going on in this room. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Threat might be, it's too noisy in here. I can't sleep. It might be, I don't know where I'm allowed to go when I want to play. I don't feel there's space for me. All of these things that we've been talking about can prompt our fight or flight response. Our fight response might look like physical, fighting, lashing out, but it might look like anger, rage, emotional dysregulation. Our flight response could be literal flight behavior, running away, leaving the house, storming upstairs. But it might also look like worry, rumination, anxiety. And our freeze response might look like shame, shut down, dissociation. So although, like I said, there's no saber-toothed tiger coming to get us, we're often in these different elements within our fight or flight response. And it's important that we can recognize that. So we might be in our rooms, in our spaces, with our family, when something will happen, something that dysregulates us. Again, think back to those infographics right at the start in terms of our executive functioning and our sensory integration. Something will happen. And if that something then starts to heighten our fight or flight response, ramp up those stress hormones within us, we're likely to see an increase in externalized behaviors, such as we've just been saying with the fight or flight. We might see agitation, we might see aggression, we might see lashing out, we might see fear, we might see anxiety, we might see worry. But as these externalizations are increasing, our ability to think calmly and rationally is going to decrease. And in the end, we're at the top of this stress behavior curve where we've got this boom moment. And this boom moment might look in lots of different ways. It might look like lashing out at our siblings. It might look like, being so overwhelmed that, we disengage with our family. It might be that we can't do the task that we're needing to do, have that shower, brush our teeth. It might be actually we're too stressed to go to sleep. But during this time, this boom moment, our ability to think calmly and clearly is going to be impaired. And it's only when those stress hormones start to come back down again that our externalized behaviors will reduce and our calm and rational thoughts will increase again and come back. So it's important to, recognize when this is happening for our children, when things are starting to build, because it's when things are starting to build that we can put strategies into place. If we wait until the boom moment, well, often that's too late, because then, that knock-on effect onto family life might mean that we're escalating it even further. So think about what those triggers are for our children, young people. Think about those sticking points in our day that we've been talking about, all those trigger points first thing in the morning when we're all battling to get in the bathroom, all those trigger points when we're expecting our children to change from one task to another, put the toys away and start dinner, all those boom moments, when our children, young people, are feeling anxious when getting ready for bed. If we can identify those triggers for our children, we can put strategies into place. You might recall I'd said earlier on that often we feel these big emotions, and I do appreciate that I'm running on a little bit here. I'll try and hurry up. So those big emotions, often our neurodivergent children might know on the one hand when they're okay, and on the other hand when they're not okay. So being able to label emotions and articulate what's happening is really, really important. So we can coach our children, I think you're feeling angry right now. It's giving our children an opportunity to go, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I'm feeling. Or perhaps, oh no, it's not that, I'm not angry, I'm scared, or I'm anxious, or I'm worried. So labeling emotions can help give our children and young people an opportunity to build, to develop their emotional vocabulary. Thinking about, how we interact with that. Our siblings often feel jealous or neglected. So we can help them build their emotional vocabulary as well, to be able to articulate to us as parents what's happening for them. It's important that we can spend time with each of our children to make sure that, they feel equally as important, because often it's our ND child that takes our time and takes our energies, just because often they need more support. So being open and honest about any strengths and challenges on the family is really, really important. So our children know that might be the situation that's making our, our dividing of our time or energies a challenge, rather than the individual child themselves. So keeping that big picture view is really, really important. And like I said earlier on, if we've developed good routine, well, that benefits all of our family, not just our ND child. Having somewhere that we can regulate, so whether it's siblings of our child, whether it's our child themselves, whether it's us as parents and carers, it's important that we have a space we can go to, or an activity we can do to help regulate us. We've got some examples on screen there. Think about when I'd said right at the very beginning of the presentation, some things help, some things hinder. What in our lives, what in our environments, what in our families help when we're feeling those big emotions? So it might be some time with our pets. It might be time out in the garden just to relax. It might be putting our music on and just concentrating on our music as that mindfulness exercise. It might be a special person in our family who helps us feel grounded and safe. It might be our favourite toys that we go to. So think about in your family what helps each individual. Make sure that they have access to a space or a strategy that can help them, with any de-escalation when they're feeling stressed or anxious or worried or overwhelmed. So identifying those spaces are really, really important. There's different relaxation strategies that we can put into place, and there's different grounding strategies we can put into place. You'll have access to this webinar, so you can go back and look at those slides, but I do appreciate that we've come to the end of our time. On our website, on the ADHD Foundation website, there's a comic book series called The Umbrella Gang, and that can be very helpful in helping our children and young people and their siblings understand neurodiversity. So you might want to go and search them out. I've come to the end of my slides, and we do have about 10 minutes for questions and answers if you have any questions. I'm sure Molly will be able to read them out.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. That was brilliant. We've had plenty of questions coming in. Like you say, we've got about 8 minutes just to get through as many as we can. So we've got a question about balancing everyone's needs here. There are 5 of us in our home. 3 of us are neurodiverse. It's really hard to find the balance that each of the people need. Some like noise, others quiet. I am neurodiverse, but as a mother, often my sensory preferences are at the bottom of my priority list, but then I end up with overwhelm or shutdown. How can I find a way to balance it for everyone?
There's no quick and easy response to that. I appreciate that. In our busy lives and our busy families, this can be quite tricky, and especially for us, like you said, as parents and carers, we're often at the bottom of the list. However, we've all heard that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, and that goes the same for us. So we need to prioritize our ways of regulating. So think what I had on the slides before, perhaps, about how we can do that, how we can calm, what helps us, and for our individual families. So we might have a child who might use the garden space to be able to calm down. For us as parents and carers, it might be 10 minutes in the bath with the door closed and no one can come in while we're in the bath, can help us there. So it's about identifying what each of us needs, so we all have different needs, and it might be just 10 minutes. We might go and sit in the car, blast the radio on full, and that might be our way of de-escalating. But without identifying what helps us, we wouldn't be able to put that strategy into place. So first and foremost, identify, de-escalating strategies for each of the family, and make sure that they have an opportunity to access a space that they can do that in.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, next one is, my neurodiverse son has echolalia, and although I let him say his random phrases at home, how can I help him learn that it isn't acceptable in society without him feeling that he can't be himself?
That is a challenging one, and it's that thing about how we can help our children to be their most authentic selves. We've all heard those themes of trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and that's absolutely not what we're trying to do. We want our child perhaps to feel comfortable in, I'm guessing his echolalia is like a stimming for him. So it may well be that if he's feeling anxious, well, that echolalia might come out a little bit more even. If that's the case, well, the first strategy would be to look at how we can lower anxiety before even thinking about the echolalia. So if it's stress-borne, let's look at the stress. If the echolalia is there, and not linked to stress, and it is causing issues for the child, well, how else can we do that? We might develop strategies where, if we're in certain situations where, our child wants to perhaps reduce the impact, it might be that we have strategies that we talk into our hand, or we whisper it, we tell it to our toy, so we're not telling it out loud. It might be strategies where we can, identify a space where our child might want to perhaps, I was almost going to say practice echolalia, I don't mean, but if our child feels that they have a need to do that, well, let's encourage that in a way that's going to benefit our child. So I hope that sort of makes sense. So initially, look at the prompt behind the echolalia. If it's stress related, reduce stress, because then that will reduce the echolalia. And I think that's the first the first point to explore first before you put other strategies into place. However, like I'd said, other strategies might be reducing volume or reducing direction if that's what our child wants to do. Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. Next one is, my neurodiverse daughter struggles with the sensation of lotions, creams and deodorant on her skin. She's at the age now where she needs a daily shower, but I think she skips the part of the job because of the sensory issues. How can I help her know the importance of keeping clean and help her overcome the sensory issues now that I can't be in the bathroom with her?
Okay, so there's 2 points there, isn't there? There's the education side around knowing why it's important. So using perhaps social stories to communicate why cleanliness is important. Communicate perhaps the consequences of not keeping up good personal hygiene. So there's that bit. There's the educative side of things. But then, yeah, we will have to do things. If we've got high, sensory issues, brushing our teeth might be tricky, or the shower on us. So think perhaps about alternatives. Okay, so if, for example, the pressure of the shower is what's heightening our anxiety around it, well, maybe a bath could be less intensive. Likewise, if the bath isn't giving us enough sensory stimulation, well, maybe a shower might help. So looking at things like that, identifying, how we can increase sensory input if that's what's needed, or decrease sensory input if that's what's needed. On top of that, if there's things that we've looked at how we can increase or decrease sensory input and there's still issues, well, it might be looking at how we can tackle those tricky points, such as brushing our teeth or washing our hair, stuff that we absolutely need to do. How can we tackle them differently? It might be that we do some mindfulness exercises before, embarking on that really tricky event. So we're feeling calm before we go in there. Because if we're feeling anxious of even going into the bathroom, well, every slightest thing's going to ramp up that anxiety, isn't it? So it might be, like I said, looking at how we can, reduce anxiety prior to the task, reduce sensory stimuli prior to the task. So we're coming from a nice low anxiety base level. It might be that perhaps we can put in things like proprioception before we do the task. Proprioception often helps lower our stress response. So, can we do some heavy work activities prior to the specific task? So by looking at it in that way, we've got a couple of different strategies there. We've got the education side of things. We've got the lowering the anxiety, first of all. We've got the managing expectations, and letting our child know explicitly what is needed and what's expected and what they can do. Giving them choice within that. If we feel we've got an element of choice, often our anxieties can lower. So, okay, you do need to be clean. You've got a choice of a bath or a shower, or in some cases, it might even just be a flannel wash. But giving choice can lower those anxieties as well. So I hope that's given you a couple of little strategies to think about, to see how that fits with your daughter.